let's just sew whatever. Hi everybody! Today's video is going to be sewing the Fun Bobby backpack from Sincerely Jen Pattern Co. This is my second time making this pattern, and I did make some changes. So I added this second handle here, and this is made with leather. So, and then I chain stitched using my pink machine these accents. It says Dorothy. I'm obsessed with this bag. Another change that I made to it was I added this sneaky slip pocket to the back panel so that I can slip my phone, my chapstick in there. And then it's got these great big side pockets. I'm not going to say too much more about the bag because I already did a review video for it. But yeah, I'm in love. I'm in love. I did mention at some point in this video that it would be really cool to print it out at a smaller percentage, so maybe like 80% or something. It might look really fun and make it like a mini backpack more so, but anyways, we'll just get into the tutorial. I hope you enjoy. Yeah. All right, you guys, so I'm going to go over the hardware you need for this bag, or I should say what I use. This bag is super simple as far as hardware goes, which is awesome. Basically, you just need 2 slide adjusters and 2 1-inch square rings. And then I'm using a ton of zipper pulls. You definitely don't need this many. If you're using all-purpose zippers, they already have zipper pulls, so nothing new there. I'm using these 2 zipper pulls for my inside pockets. I'll include a link from where they're from down below. I believe it's Tay's Custom Creations. Don't quote me on that. I'm going to use 2 pop tab zipper pulls for the top zipper. And then for the front zipper pocket, I'm going to use these 2 zipper pulls together. It only calls for 1 zipper, but you can always use 2. And then for the back zipper pocket, I'm going to go ahead and use this one. So it just takes a bunch of zippers and slide adjusters and rectangle rings. So what do you think, Ben? So I'm going to start with all of my lining pieces first, just so by the time I'm done with the exterior and I'm super excited, I can just get into making the bag. So I'm going to start with the side pockets first. I am using leather and waterproof canvas. I do have a video of me cutting out this bag if you're interested. It is a live video, so it's a little long, not edited, but whatever. So side pockets. I went ahead and just kind of roughly cut out my lining pieces because it's not a big deal. You're gonna trim it down anyway. I also learned how to use my skiver finally for leather. So what that does is it reduces bulk within the seam allowances, etc. of your leather, so it's a little bit easier to use. So you can see the full thickness of the leather, and then we trimmed it down. And then I used my pink chain stitch machine to chain stitch the suns on there. They don't look amazing, but whatever. So 1/2-inch seam allowance using a construction stitch length, so about a 4.5 or a 4, depending on your machine. I'm just going to sew along the top and back stitch. And then I'm going to continue to sew these together. I'm not going to take it off my machine or anything. And then I'm going to trim down that curve so that it folds nicely. Another thing you can do, which actually I'm going to do, I like the bulk of that seam. So what I'm going to do is just add some snips along that curve. You could also use like pinking shears or something. And I'm just going very carefully along the top to make sure that I don't cut through my stitching. You don't want to do that. So I'm just adding little tiny slits into that seam allowance so that when I fold this over, I get a nice curve. And then you can just roll that seam in between your fingers. You can use some clips to hold it in place. If you're not using vinyl or anything that's meltable, whatever, you can go ahead and iron it or iron from the back side. But then I'm going to just sew the top and then base stitch all around that pocket. And you can switch your stitch length to a 5 or whatever you're comfortable using for a top stitch. And then, like I said, I'll just trim down that excess, because I find it is a lot faster to cut out one of these perfectly and just rough cut the other one out of my lining. And then I'm gonna want to know where the center of this pocket is, so while I'm here, I'll go ahead and fold that in half and just make a little snip in the center at the bottom. And then I'm going to set it aside and we'll continue the other one. Press on that seam. Make sure to roll it in between your fingers. And then what I'm doing with this hand is actually slowing down my hand wheel along the curves. It kind of helps me stay in control with the speed. A little pro tip. Obviously that's not going to work with all machines, but if you have one similar to this, it might be something you can try. And I also started with 5 bobbins of thread for this bag. If you have a domestic machine or a thinner thread, you're not going to need 5 bobbins. But with the straps and everything for this bag, I went ahead and just did 5 so I wouldn't run out. But there are both of our side pockets finished. Put them in the Dunzo pile. And now I'm going to grab my 2 interior lining pieces. Oof, so much stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and set those together. I went ahead and set my side panels with the side pockets so that that's all together. These are all for my front bag. There we go. Perfect. That's all exterior bits. All right, so this is the bottom of the bag. I'm not going to need this for a minute. And this is my slip pocket. Because I'm using waterproof canvas for my bag, I don't cut out 2 of those slip pockets. I only cut out 1 because it would be way too thick with 2 pieces. So when working with waterproof canvas, you kind of have to adjust sometimes. But it's nice because you don't need to use interfacing with it. So it's all just personal preference. There's no right or wrong. So I've added double-sided tape to the bottom of this slip pocket so that I have a nice clean edge. And then you could also do that to the top, but I'm just going to fold it over and top stitch. But just so you have 2 folded over kind of like finished edges. The waterproof canvas I use is from FWD Fabrics. You can also buy it off of Amazon. I've heard they sell it at Walmart. There's all kinds of places to get it. Okay. I'm going to be adding 2 zippered pockets to this bag. So I'll go ahead and prep those. One of them is the standard size that's in the pattern, and then the other one I've cut to 9 inches by 7.5, and that's just a smaller zippered pocket so that it's not so endless abyss type. So I'm gonna fold this in half. Doesn't matter which way, honestly. And then on the back side, I'm going to mark out a 7-inch by 1/2 inch square, about 1 inch from the top. So there's that. And this zipper template is from topsandbobbins.com. And then I'm going to fold my lining piece in half in the opposite direction I folded the other one, so that when I put the right sides together, those seams just kind of sit on top of each other. So where it's folded, they just kind of like nest nicely. And then the pattern states how low to place that zippered pocket. So just follow those directions. And then I like to sew 2 parallel lines with a stitch length of about 4 or 4.5. So I backstitch to secure it. And then I just pivot and jump over to the other side, backstitch to secure, and then sew along the other direction. Again, totally personal preference. If you have a different way you like to do a zipper pocket, just follow that. And then I'm going to take these micro tip scissors to cut into the corners of the zipper pocket. So you cut through the center and then cut out to the corners in a Y shape. Cut that open. You can see we've cut into those corners without cutting through our thread. And you just flip that through so that the wrong sides are now together. And if you're new to working with waterproof canvas, the right side has a texture and the wrong side is smooth. So you know. And then I'm going to press that with an iron. If you're working with waterproof canvas, again, it cannot take long amounts of high heat. It will begin to melt, and you cannot iron the backside, or again, it will melt, so be careful. When you sew a zipper pocket that way, sometimes these little triangles stick out. All you have to do is kind of fold them back in, and you're all set. So when I'm working with zipper by the yard, I like to cut probably about 2 or 3 inches more than I really need, so that I can zip my zipper pull very close to the end, and then sew my zipper tape in place with my zipper pull out of the way, but make sure you bring it into the seam allowance before you close off your zipper pocket. And again, that's personal preference, totally up to you. And then you can use pins, clips, double-sided tape, whatever you need to hold your zipper in place. After making thousands of zipper pockets in my lifetime, I can just kind of hold it in place and it usually turns out okay. I do like to backstitch over the sides of that zipper pocket. And depending on the size of your zipper pull, you may need to leave less space unsewn to be able to get it through. So just make sure you do that. Make sure you leave your needle in place as you do that, if you need to zip or unzip your zipper, so that it doesn't move. There we go. And then I always like to zip it and get the tape in place nice and straight. And pivot, close it up. And then we'll add the other side of that zippered pocket. Since I'm using smaller measurements for this one, I'll go ahead and close up this zipper fully, since the other one will be left open to turn the bag through. So you can sew around all 4 sides. And then if you would like to kind of reinforce your zipper pocket, you can add a second line of stitching along the bottom. Because if you think about how much stuff you cram into a zippered pocket, like pens, pencils, that kind of thing, you might want that extra little layer. Totally up to you. And then on this side, I'm going to add that slip pocket that we prepped earlier. And if you're going to sew this as a divided slip pocket, make sure that you flip your zipper pocket up so that you don't divide your zippered pocket. That might sound like a cool concept, but it's really limiting to what you can put in that zippered pocket. Ask me how I know. So I won't be adding a division line to this one because this is my personal bag, and what I'm putting in it, I don't want the division line. I don't have to explain myself to you, and you don't have to explain yourself to me. So I'm just going to sew this in place with a U shape with a stitch length of about 4.5. You're basically just basting it along the sides and then sewing it in place along the bottom. And then while I've got this piece ready in front of me, I'm going to fold it in half at the bottom and make a center snip. I'm not sure that I needed to, but whatever. Why not? So this lining piece is done. I can go ahead and leave my zippered pocket fully zipped because I'm not going to be birthing the bag through that zippered pocket. So I'm going to put that in my done pile and work on the next side. I'm probably going to cut out this zippered pocket from the video because I just showed you the other one. But you're just going to make it to the size directed in the pattern and sew it the same exact way. So just for speed's sake of the tutorial, yeah. Okay, see you in a second. Okay, I am going to show you guys how I sew this zipper pocket closed. I actually made this a 9-inch zipper. I'm not sure what the pattern says, but I don't like how close to the seam allowance the large zippered pocket is, because I know myself and I'm going to catch it within the seam allowance, and that's going to make birthing it a lot harder. So what I like to do is start by folding both pieces under one way or the other, and it kind of creates like a little flap, a seal on the pocket, but I'll show you what it does at the end, but just trust me. Fold both sides over. And then you're going to sew in a U shape only around 3 sides, so side and top and side. And then you're gonna fold up the bottom on the other side as well, the same amount. And back stitch at the end and the beginning. And then trim that excess down, especially at the bottom of the zippered pocket. Make sure you don't cut through the other side of your lining. Alrighty. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna open this seam up at the bottom. And it creates a nice fold with a minimal seam. So it's not super bulky or anything. And that is the two main lining pieces done. Go ahead and leave that zipper pocket open so that you can turn the bag through it. And then you'll sew this up at the end. So now we can get started with the exterior. So I'm going to start with my sneaky slip pocket. This is 100% not part of the pattern. And I do have a separate tutorial showing how to do it. So I may not show you guys on camera how I'm doing this because you can check the other video. But basically I've cut out this section from the top and I'll be adding like a facing and a backing to put in between the handles so that on the back of it, I've just got a little slip pocket that I can put my phone into, take out. It's just another pocket that's easy to get in and out of. So if you see that on my finished bag, I've done the linked tutorial down below for the sneaky slip pocket. All right, so there is what that slip pocket looks like. And this is going to be attached to the back. So my straps, my strap overlay are going to kind of cover this up a little bit, but we'll still have that easy access slip pocket on the back. So let's go ahead and work on our back panel before the straps. I know I said straps, that's my bad. So I need these two pieces and then our back pocket lining, back bottom main lining. Perfect. And then I'll need one of my zippers as well. And again, I like to cut this zipper longer than needed just so there's excess and it's plenty within the seam allowances and I don't have to deal with moving my zipper pull in and out of the way. Okay. So I'm going to grab an exterior piece. If you're dealing with a directional pattern, make sure to take note of which direction your fabric should go. And then the zipper pull will go at the top of that on the left side. And I'm flipping mine over just because ease of sewing. And I'm clipping my zipper right along the edge. And if you would like to, you can base that in place before adding your lining. But I'm going to add my lining now so that the leather doesn't drag across the bottom of the machine. Because leather can be kind of sticky to work with. So I'm going to flip this over and sew along that seam. Am I doing this wrong? No. So you want to sew close to the zipper teeth, but of course not through them. Back stitch. And then you can just finger press or use your iron. You want to sew through the exterior and the lining. So I'm just going to go ahead and press this from the lining side using a little bit of steam. If you're working with leather, be very careful with the steam. I forgot about it, but that can ruin your leather sometimes. It can stiffen it up. Get that zipper pull out of the way. There we go. Okay, and then we're gonna add that little strip to the other side. Again, if you're using a directional fabric, Make sure you keep in mind which way's up or down. And then you can baste that in place before adding your lining, but I'm gonna go ahead and just add my lining. And one of your lining pieces is shorter, one is longer. In the pattern, I just cut them to the same size, the longer size, and then I'll trim it down in the end. Just kind of saves time for me. All right, and then we're gonna flip that open, leaving the lining with the lining. You don't want to open both sides or you're going to create a weird bulky seam. And then if your zipper pull is out of the seam allowance, go ahead and bring it through. And then while I'm here, I'm just going to baste all of these layers together. So now you'll have a zipper pocket like so. And this is going to get attached to the back main panel. So you want to flip it so that the zipper is facing the top main panel and the top main panel is face down. And you're just going to clip that top long edge together and sew using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you added a slip pocket like I did, you want to make sure that you're folding it out of the way. And we're going to sew right along there, and then I'll trim off all that excess gobbledygook. Using a stitch length of about 4.5, back stitch over that zipper. That's just personal preference, not necessary, but I like to reinforce that area. And then I'm only trimming my excess lining and zipper tape. I'm not trimming the excess fabric that's there already. You know what I mean? Like anything that's without of that 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm trimming down, but keeping my seam allowance to that 1/2 inch. And then you're gonna fold that up and top stitch through. But again, you wanna watch out for that slip pocket. So I'm folding the slip pocket up. If you need to, you can clip it out of the way. If you're not adding this piece, you can just carry on your merry little way. It's not in your pattern, but if it is an addition you have made, keep note. So now, other than adding our backpack straps, this is the back piece. And I decided to use 2 different colors because my purple leather was going to be way too thick with that slip pocket and all the straps and stuff. But here is what that slip pocket looks like. It's cool, right? It's cool, I know. Okay, so now we're going to finish up the back panel. So I'm going to be working on all of my straps and these strap connectors. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the connectors. I've got these pieces that are 2 inches by 4 inches. So they're a little bit shorter than I need them to be. I'm not super worried about it because I know what I'm doing, but it's definitely helpful to follow the directions. Especially if you're working with quilting cotton with this pattern, I would follow the instructions that she's given because they're awesome. but I've added double-sided tape to the center of this strap connector, and I'm just folding the ends of my leather into the center. And then I'm going to top stitch before adding my hardware because that adds a little bit more strength to your strap connector. That's stitching, especially if you're using a stronger thread. Okay, beautiful. It basically, what it does is it helps prevent any stretching that might happen over time. I mean, it's not going to make it last forever, but give it a little something, something. Okay, and now I can string my square rings through. I'll add some clips. And then you can add a rivet if you want, but what I'm going to do is what I call a T-stitch. So I'm basically going to sew down the center, and then I'm going to pivot and sew across here so that the strap connector doesn't like flap open or anything. You could also do a box stitch here if you wanted to, or you could follow these same stitch lines, sew across, go back down. Personal preference, there's no right or wrong way. And then instead of lifting up and clipping everything off, I'm just going to sew it all together and then trim down. Okay, so now those strap connectors are finished and I can work on the grab handle. I am doing something a little bit different with my pattern. When don't I? And I'm going to be adding 2 grab handles to my bag. So I've cut my handles to 3 inches by about 12.5 inches. And I'm going to add double-sided tape to the center of both of my handles. Fold the long raw edges to the center. I'm going to leave a little bit of space in between so that they're not right next to each other and there's room for it to fold. I'm literally leaving a tiny, tiny bit. You can see that tape through the middle. And this double-sided tape is from waywack.com. It's called double-sided leather tape, but you don't have to use it with leather. However, if you're using a domestic machine, it can cause sticky residue on your needle and kind of jam up your machine, so use at your own risk. Use at your own risk. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. And then I'm going to fold it in half again, but I'm only going to sew the handle together a couple inches from the inside. So let's see. Is it about 3 inches? Yeah. I'm going to do about 3 inches. So I'm going to measure 3 inches. I'm going to start sewing and then 3 inches from the other end. So it'll only be a little bit of the handle that's sewn together. And that kind of creates like a faux rolled handle. So I'm just using a little marking pencil pen. It's not a pencil. You could use another piece of double-sided tape to hold it together, but I'm just going to fold it by hand. Start at that line, back stitch, and continue. I have not tried this before on this pattern. I mean, I've added this grab handle to the back of my original piece, but not this way. So fingers crossed it works out, huh? All right, and then we're just gonna repeat that on this other handle. 3 inches from one end, 3 inches from the other. Wink. Fold that over. Start here. I should be running out of bobbin thread soon. That's why I've been avoiding doing the backpack straps, because you want a nice full bobbin for that. Oh yeah, perfect. So for this strap that I'm doing, I do not want to see anything from the back side. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this straight so that I can't see any leather from the other side. So that one there, it's hard to see, but there's a little bit of leather showing. And I'm kind of cutting it at an angle too, so that when I fold this down to sew it on, you can't see. Oh, I'm excited. This is looking great. Okay, so this is my overlay piece, and I want it to be a little bit thicker than the pattern suggests. So I've cut it to 3 inches wide. And I'm only going to fold the raw ends under 1/2 inch so that this piece is 2 inches wide. Lots of reinforcement here. Okay, so that's my reinforcement strip. And then my backpack straps, I have cut to 2.5 inches wide because I'm using leather. Now that I've skived the leather, which I wasn't able to do before, it's much thinner, and I could have cut 4 inches wide, but this is also just a way to save leather because she's expansive. So I'm going to be folding the edges under about 1/4 inch on each side, and then folding it in half. So it should equal about 1 inch wide when I'm done. If you watched my live video cutting and interfacing this bag, I mentioned doing a video chat with Garth from Myth Leather Co. And we did do that, and then Facebook messed up and we can't access the video anymore. Like after he joined, there is no video. It's such a bummer because it was such good information. And it would be something that's kind of hard to recreate, but we will definitely try. If you guys haven't checked out his videos, you definitely should. This is boring. I do apologize. But it's always fun bag making, and getting all of these like little tasks out of the way, because then like the bag just comes together so quick. It's so fun. All right, folding those edges under. You could also use cotton webbing for your bag, or a polypropylene or nylon webbing if you seal it properly. I have never had luck with that stuff. It always rips on me. I made a bunch of tote bags one time with it, sold them all, and I would say probably 30 to 40% of them broke on people. They ripped after a while and I had to replace them all, so I will just stay away from that. But if you use it and it's successful, good on you. Okay, so I'll go ahead and turn off the camera to fold the other one, but I folded it like that, and then I'm gonna fold it in half and we'll top stitch along both sides, and then we'll add our slide adjusters. Okay, so now we're onto the straps, no lie this time, and I've gone ahead and changed out my bobbin. I didn't have that much longer to go on the other one, so it's best to start fresh. We don't want the bobbin to get us. Okay, so I'm just going to fold this in half and top stitch on the open edge first, and then go along the other side. You want to sew just about 1/8 from the outside edge. If you're working with webbing, another thing you could do is add some accent fabric. So just cut like a 2-inch piece of fabric and then sew it, like fold the raw ends into the center. Basically, you'd be making like a double-sided strap with half the work. That could be really fun. All right, so now we're going down the other side. There's that strap, and then I'll just go ahead and sew the other one while I'm here. Makes it a little easier. If you're using leather or vinyl and you're not really good at like folding it as you go, something you can do is use double-sided tape or clips to hold it together. You can't iron it. Okay, and then we'll just go down the other side. And then I am going to trim down those edges so they're nice and straight. Cut away any raw, well, uneven, not raw. It's going to be a raw edge. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and add our slide adjuster to one side. If your straps have like a right and a wrong side, you want to kind of take note of that. My straps, I don't really have a right or a wrong side. I'm not worried about it. And the way she does hers is she'll fold over 1/2 inch and then fold it over again so that it covers the raw end. With leather, I'm not so concerned about that raw edge. Same with vinyl. So I'm just going to sew a box stitch to secure it in place. And then you can add a diagonal line if you want. Okay, so there's what that looks like. And then we're going to lay that with the folded under seam facing up. Same with the slide adjuster. And you're gonna feed this strap connector through and then go through one side of the slide adjuster over the top and then out through the other, so that we're gonna have an adjustable strap here, and we're gonna have a raw end on one side and a raw edge of the strap connector on the other. And then we can just set that aside. I like to make this pretty short, so make the loop smaller by folding over the fabric double, adjusting it shorter. Whatever word will help you. And then we're just gonna repeat those steps on the other strap. And you want to kind of fold over everything the same amount so that the straps are even. Okay, so the raw end there, fold this up and through, then adjust it smaller. Make sure nothing has flipped or anything like that. So we're good to go there. So now we can follow the directions, the markings on the pattern. Oh, where'd my pattern? There we go. To place our handle and the straps. Okay, so I want one of my grab handles and both of my straps, and I'm going to be using double-sided tape to help me hold everything in place. So I want to just going to take a long piece and place it about 2.5 inches down from the top. And then I'm going to mark my center as well. Right there. Okay, because then from the center, it's 1 inch from the center. You're going to place one side of the handle, the grab handle, and then same on the other side, 1 inch. Oh, let me lower the camera. All right, so I've got my center lined up, one on one side, one on the other, and then 1/2 inch from those pieces are going to be the backpack straps. So I'm going to add more double-sided tape, and you want the backpack straps to be facing up. So they would normally sit like this. You want it to be flipped so that when you lay it down, it's in the right spot. So again, 1/2 inch from one handle. And if you added a sneaky slip pocket and used the measurements I give in the cutting and interfacing video, it basically lines up right with the edge of that pocket. So this is what we're looking at here. And what I'm going to do is just sew along two rows of stitching all along that back piece. So about a 1/2 inch box of stitching along those straps. And the straps were added. The bottom of this strap is 3 inches from the top, like 3.25 inches from the top. 3.25. I just want to remember that when I add the other side so that they're the same. And you want to make sure if you added your slip pocket that it is not folded up or anything like that, so that you're accidentally stitching through it. You don't want that. That'd be bad. That'd be a bad day. All right, so then I can take my accent piece. I'm gonna add double-sided tape to the back of it as well, so it doesn't shift around while I'm stitching it in place. And then this overlay, according to the pattern, gets placed 2 inches from the top, which will cover up everything nicely. So laying that double-sided tape over. So that's what that'll look like, and I'm just gonna sew across the top and the bottom. And you could add a 3rd row of stitching in the center if you wanted to, especially if it's going to help reinforce your backpack straps. But as I'm sewing over those straps, I'm going to be adding a little bit of a back stitch. Get you guys raised up so you can see a little bit better. And again, make sure nothing is flipped up or in the wrong place while you're top stitching. That makes for a bad day. So there's what that's looking like. And there's that slip pocket. Looks so good. All right, and then the backpack straps, make sure you straighten them out. You can see your slide adjusters when you're sitting it straight. And then there are pattern markings to help you place it. And clip it in place and then baste it. Make sure they're at the right angle. Oh, too late. I sewed that one a little bit too close. But so there are your backpack straps, and the back panel is finished. All right, so now it's time for the last big section of the bag, which is that front zippered pocket. What I love about this bag is how simple the elements are, but when they all come together, it creates a really elegant looking bag. But also there's ways to make it masculine, feminine, or, you know, neutral, which is fine too. It's fun. I love it. Okay, so we're gonna start with our front bottom piece face up. I've again cut my zipper really, really long so that I can just move it out of the way and not have to deal with it. So I'm gonna grab one of these lining pieces and lay that face down so that right sides are together. And what I do to help me keep my zipper in place is I'll add these clips to the zipper, and then I'll add clips to the lining so that it all stays together nicely. And just sew right next to that zipper. Okay. And then you're going to flip the wrong sides together, and I'm going to go ahead and press my lining just because this is a lot of fabric. The leather is really thick, so I'm going to go ahead and press that using a little bit of steam. Okay, and then we're going to top stitch through the exterior and the lining. I'm just making sure that all my layers are nice and flat as I'm sewing through, so I get a nice top stitch. And then I'm going to lay the lining piece right sides together along the back of the zipper. So right now my back lining piece is face up, and I've laid the other lining piece face down so that right sides are together. And then lining up the top of the panel, I'm going to face it down and add more clips to sew all of that together. And then I can flip that zipper onto itself. So what she does in the pattern is you're basically lining up your lining and your exterior pieces, because if you were to lay it flat, you can see it's going to be a little bit longer. So what she does is she lines all of that up, and it has your zipper kind of sitting on itself. So it creates a different kind of zippered pocket. I did not do this on my first one because I didn't read the pattern instructions. Just kind of put it together. So make sure you zip in your zipper pulls. I'm trying to think if I don't know that I want to create that, because then my zippers won't lay flat. They'll kind of have that bulk all the time. So what I'm going to do is just trim off the excess. This is a personal choice. And what you're gonna do if you're doing it this way is fold up that seam allowance so you get a nice seam to top stitch through. And make sure that your lining is facing down. So lining right sides are together still, and I'm gonna be top stitching through the exterior and the zipper tape. So yeah, this is just gonna have my zipper sitting a little bit nicer. If you're using an all-purpose zipper, no worries, but since I'm using these really big zipper pulls. I don't want them to, you know, sit weird. So that's why I'm doing it this way. And then, can we get out of the way, please? Continue. Thank you. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip everything over. This is not the instructions again. This is just the way I'm doing it. And then I'm going to baste everything together, sewing it at the bottom of that pocket. So then I can just trim off all that excess. So it's about 1/2 inch. Okay. And then if you wanted to, you can baste all of your pieces together. I'm not super worried about it because the bottom is sewn and things really shouldn't shift much. But if you think you might accidentally unzip your zipper pulls or something like that, it's not gonna hurt. So there are those 2 zipper pulls. Again, this is totally unnecessary. And something you could even do is actually make this a divided zippered pocket by just stitching down the center. Another way to kind of mix it up. I'm gonna go ahead and baste that closed just because it feels weird not to. So if I were adding foam to this pattern, I would honestly add it at this stage while everything is finished so that there are no like weird creases or seams where it isn't foamed. I don't know. Anyway, so now I'm gonna add my grab handle. I'm really excited about this. Yeah, it'll be easier to add it now. I was just thinking, do I want to add it after or now? But I want to add it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab double-sided tape and I'm going to tape the handle on to the bag. Okay, and then I'm adding it 3.25 inches from the top. And then 1 inch on either side from the center. So it's 4 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4 inches from either side. Nope. Let's see. Hold please. Looks like it should be, yeah, 3.5 inches from either side. So this just needs to come over a little bit. I always like to have 2 points of measurement just to help me make sure I've got everything centered. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And then I'm going to sew a box stitch, and I'm actually going to mark this out with the silver marking pencil just so it's perfect on either side. So I'm going to mark a 1 inch line on either side. Okay, so those are my 1 inch lines, and I'm just going to create a box stitch. My stitch length, I'm going to set it to 4.5, and away we go. This is actually my first time doing a handle this way. Normally I would add square rings and strap connectors, but I just thought that it would look kind of cool. And it's a different kind of method, you know, so we're going with it. And then I'm going to sew diagonally from corner to corner, and then again along the bottom. So there's what that's looking like. So that is it for the main parts, and then we'll work on adding the zipper and the side panels, and we're almost done. All right, so now that we're putting it together, you want to get kind of organized. Put your bottom pieces together, get your side panels together, and then put your side pockets off to the side. You want to snip the centers in your bottom panels and your side pieces as well. Okay, so you really want to pay attention to how this top zipper is added. It can be kind of confusing, but once you get a hang of it, you'll be like, that's genius. So we're going to fully sew the main zipper to the top exterior. And with the top zipper, I do like to base that in place so that it doesn't shift. So we're just going to use like 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on that. And then when we add our lining piece, we're only going to sew that 1/2 inch from each side. So leave 1/2 inch unsewn from each side, I should say. And it definitely helps to mark that out with a marking pencil. I'm just clipping that in place, flipping it over, and then I'm going to follow my other stitch line, but again, 1/2 inch from the outer edges. Don't forget, leave 1/2 inch unsewn from the outer edges on that lining. So you can see my original stitch line and then that 1/2 inch stitch line. And then I'm going to use my iron to iron my lining, and then we'll stitch through the exterior and the lining. And now again, with this top stitch, you only want to top stitch 1/2 inch. You want to leave 1/2 inch unstitched from the outer edges, is what I was trying to say. So 1/8 of an inch from the top edge. I'm going to use a stitch length of 5. Make sure everything is nice and flat. then again, as you're getting to the other side, remember to leave that 1/2 inch unsewn. And then we're just going to repeat those steps on the other side. So there's what it's looking like so far, and you can see the shape of the bag starting to come together and how these grab handles are going to look, and I love them. So excited. I mean, I love them right now. Maybe in 15 minutes I won't. We'll see. All right, so it's gonna get a little bit bulky with everything together, so I definitely want to make sure that I base that zipper in place carefully, very carefully. So I'm adding the zipper to the top exterior, and you can sew that whole thing down. Make sure everything is straight. Do your best not to like pull on the zipper, just kind of let it be what it wants to be. Make sure it's nicely ironed. Make sure your outer edges line up. Okay, and then I'll grab my other lining piece. 1/2 inch unsewn on each end, okay? Don't forget. I'm reminding myself too, because I'd forget. Flip that over. I didn't leave that 1/2 inch unsewn. I was thinking about how my husband's birthday is tomorrow. And I'm just stupid. So stupid. Okay. There we go. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. It's within our seam allowance anyway. So it's fine. 1/2 inch unsewn. Oy, oy, oy. Half an inch. Honestly, that's why you should mark it out. Okay, so I'm going to iron this side so it's nice and flat, and then we'll flip it over and top stitch. So right now it's a lot of bag. Make sure that the linings are with the correct linings, exteriors are with the correct exteriors, and you want to make sure top stitching within that 1/2 inch from each outer edge. And that everything is sitting nicely. 1/2 inch. Don't forget it. You'll regret it. And if things are too big, you can kind of like roll it, fold it. But you want to make sure that your lining is sitting nicely. It's not bunched up. Make sure the other lining is sitting nicely as well. Half an inch unsewn, either side. Dang it. The bobbin got me. I was even listening. I was like, it sounds like it's gonna run out soon. All right, not too bad. It's only like 10 stitches without thread. That is a bummer though. So when that happens, I just rethread my bobbin. I'll backstitch to lock it in place and then pretend it never happened. Hopefully. Trimming down all my loose threads there. It's looking good. I'm obsessed with these handles. Okay, bring your zipper pulls in at this point. Thank you. And then you want to grab your exterior side panel and your lining side panel. I have already snipped the bottom centers of these, like I mentioned a few seconds ago. A couple minutes ago. Okay. So I'm gonna line this up with my exterior fabric. Clip that together. Exterior only. And I'm gonna flip this over and move my lining fabric out of the way. Half an inch seam allowance. And what I do is I go ahead and just jump over the zipper. Oh wait, that's right, you fold it out of the way. You can sew through the zipper, but you're folding your lining fabric away. Editing Lauren will zoom in. And your zipper will be sewn to the exterior of the fabric. Nice secure. And then you can top stitch this panel down. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Before I add my lining, I'm gonna do that. And just make sure you fold that lining out of the way. Oh crap. One thing that I felt on my bag that I wanted to add was D-rings on the side panels. Not for a crossbody strap necessarily, but you can if you want. Kind of slide it in right there. But because I have like my keys that I put in the slip pockets, and just for a little bit of security, you can clip it to that and put it in the pocket. So that was my thought process there. Okay, so now I can trim down my zipper tape just a little bit and add my lining piece of fabric, right sides together. Got it. Go me. And you want to make sure that you're pulling that fabric nice and tight. Okay, so we've got our exterior. We're going to fold out of the way, including that zipper. Yeah. And then we're going to sew that at 1/2 inch of seam allowance. So there's a little hole there, but what you can do is fold all of your seam allowances down and just add another stitch right there, just a little one. So that's what I'm gonna do. Fold all of those seams down and add a tiny little stitch over the zipper to close it up. Tiny little line of stitching, I should say. Or you can whip stitch it by hand or something like that. And then you'll repeat that on the other side, and then we'll add our slip pocket. So I want the one without the sun on this side. Ooh. And this is where those center snips are going to come into place. You're going to line up the bottom center snip and clip out the rest of the pocket. So the bottom should line up nicely, and then the top you're going to want to fold and manipulate into place because it's a 3D pocket, so it kind of creates like a slippered shape, so it's open. So the bottom will fit perfectly, and then the top you'll want to stretch into place. And then you're going to sew all the way around and make sure that your lining is out of the way. So there is that side pocket. You can see the shape of the bag coming together nicely. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of this off camera. All right, time to add the bottom of the bag. So here is the other side pocket added. So now what we will do is start with the exterior. I'm gonna go ahead and unzip my top zipper just so I don't forget. So I'm going to start with the front panel. Make sure your lining is out of the way. You're going to clip the bottom panel on and sew it with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You could add purse feet if you wanted to this bag. I'm not going to add purse feet. I don't think it's necessary, but there's what that looks like. And then we'll just do the same to the other side of the exterior. Lining that up. Half inch seam allowance. And then we'll repeat that on the exterior, or the lining, not the exterior. Repeat that on the lining. If you're using really thick materials, instead of birthing through the zipper pocket, you could birth through the lining and then sew it shut. I think I might do that just because this leather is super thick. So on the side that the bag is going to be opened from, I'm only going to sew about 2 inches in on either side so that I have this nice wide opening without a zipper, without zipper teeth to accidentally scratch the leather or anything like that. It'll just be easier. I'm gonna go ahead and increase my seam allowance for the lining just by a little bit so that it isn't saggy within the bag. Saggy in the baggy. Okay, so bringing those lining pieces together. It's a lot of bag, you guys. It's a lot. I think this bag would be really, really cute if you printed it out maybe 80%. It would be like a little mini backpack. It'd be super cute. All right, so stitching just a couple inches on that side, jumping over, and a couple inches on this side. And it might seem silly to have those 2 openings, but it's really gonna help me out when turning the bag through so that I don't have to worry about the zipper teeth. And that's totally personal preference. All right, so now we are ready to sew up those side seams, man. Let's start by marking out the centers of the bottom by lining up the seam there. So I'm basically folding the bottom panel on itself. You could do this before you sew it together, but if your seam allowances aren't exactly perfect, the bottoms might not be perfect when you sew them, so it just depends on how OCD you are. No shame. All right, folding that up, making a center snip, folding that up, making a center snip. So you can start with your exterior or your lining, whatever your heart desires or whatever the pattern says, if you want to follow that. I will probably use a stapler because this is a rounded gusset and there are a lot of parts to it. I don't want anything to shift while I'm sewing it together. But you're going to, if you haven't transferred the markings from the pattern piece for the seam allowance, it kind of creates this curved shape, and that's where you start. It's almost like a dart on the bag. It's clever. I love it. All right, I don't need these anymore. Drop something, it's fine, it's fine. Okay. And there's never too many clips. There's no such thing. And those back panels and side panels should kind of line up. I think they're off by maybe half an inch so that it's not super bulky in your seam allowance. Very clever. Never enough clips. All right, so now you're just going to sew in a U shape from one dart all the way around the gusset to the other dart. And I'll go ahead and switch up the camera view so you can see that better. Okay. I'm gonna try it without a stapler just because I'm gonna use a stitch length of about 4. We're gonna start at the dart top, back stitch, and then make sure that those layers don't shift or it won't look good. And then I like to add some back stitches over these seams. Leave your needle in to readjust along those curves. And I find that the shape of this backpack is very forgiving. Since, at least with the materials I'm using, it has a bit of a slouch that I really love. Make sure that your hardware is not within your seam allowance. Sometimes it can get folded, and that's how you break a needle or hurt yourself. Going over that strap connector, so it's gonna get thick, and I like to make sure that I back stitch over it for reinforcement. And then we'll keep going because we have to do this 4 more times. 8 more? 7 more. Yeah. No, 4. 4 times total. I'm used to making the Tribbiani travel bag, which has a rounded bottom, so you do have to do it quite a few times. Okay, but there is our gusset. You can trim down your seam allowances, but make sure you do not trim down at your strap connector. And then it's up to you if you want to do your exteriors all together or do each side of the bag, something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and clip the other side together, and then we'll sew that gusset again. All right, we've got it all clipped together, and we're going to sew that other side. Make sure your linings are out of the way and you're following those markings if you have them. Back stitching over any accent pieces for reinforcement. And keeping a consistent seam allowance. All right, I'm getting close to my strap connector, so I want to make sure that my hardware is out of the way and that you add a couple back stitches for reinforcement again. And then again, if you need to reposition your machine, make sure your needle stays down. This bag is a real test to how much better my hands are doing, and they are feeling fine. Sweet action. So thank you, Dorothy, for not ruining my hands. I appreciate you. And then I always backstitch on those darts within the seam allowance. Alrighty. So now we can work on our lining pieces. And we're just gonna do the same thing. We're gonna clip those together and sew up those darts. Okay, lining all put together. Time to sew it. And then increase your seam allowance on the lining so that it isn't saggy. Using a stapler can definitely help with this part of the bag. help keep everything in place if your clips aren't holding, etc. And you want to make sure that your zippered pocket is folded out of the way. So I'm going to trim down the seam allowance and do the other side off camera, and then we will turn the bag through. Oh my gosh. Okay, time to birth the bag. Sorry, I just saw what time it was. Ooh. 10 o'clock. All right, so I left this decent sized opening within the lining. I made sure that my top zipper is fully open. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by grabbing the exterior bottom through. Turn in the bag. And what's really nice about the construction of this bag is pretty much after this step, you're done. You know, sometimes you have to like add handles, stuff like that. Once you turn the bag, top stitch, there's no top stitching really to need to do. And then this is going to be a good test of how well your bag is put together. If it can withstand turning. There we go. Once we get that bottom through, it's a lot easier. Yeah. Okay. So then I'm going to push on all the side seams for the exterior. This is going to be a way for us to check and make sure that we've caught all of our seams. You can yank on your straps. Push into the corners of your bag. I have a lot of excess strings that I need to clip. That's fine. That's a me problem. And you're going to push against those darts within the top of the bag as well. And then if you turn through the zipper pocket, you're just gonna sew it up and call it a day. But since I left my turn hole opening, I have to sew that closed, and then I can sew that lining closed. So I have my zipper pocket pulled out. I'm gonna grab the bottom of the lining, pull that back through my zipper pocket. So it's a little redundant to do this step, but it's worth it to me to not have to deal with zipper teeth that might scratch the exterior of my bag somehow. But then I'm just going to sew this shut. Once that is sewn shut, if you'd like to, you can trim the excess. You're just gonna stick that back and check to make sure that your lining fits nicely within the bag. And then you'll sew that zipper pocket shut. And with the way that we sewed it together, it's already folded for us. And we'll just sew that shut. So I'll do that really quick. You can add a woven label if you want to, or something fun. And then I've got some extra threads that I need to snip off the bag, so I'm gonna do that. But other than that, that's the bag, you guys. I love like the addition of the handle on the front. That would be really easy for anyone to do, really, especially if you're using webbing or something. Or you could add a double-sided strap, or you could do vinyl in this same way. The world is your oyster. I'm just manipulating that pocket closed. And then I'm gonna zip it shut and just kind of straighten out the bag, push along those corners, and I'm going to trim all of my excess threads. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!